Hello guys, a very short video to talk about the term fencing. Okay, so in the modern world, when you say to someone I do fencing, the first thing they think of is people in all white tight-fitting outfits, fencing masks at the Olympics using either a foil, épée or a sabre. That's not a wrong perception at all, but I hope that as historical fencing as a movement grows, that we can remind people that the term fencing actually goes far further back than what modern people think of as fencing in an Olympic context. So fencing, debatably in English, comes from the term for defence, the art of defence, or possibly offence as well, but both offence and defence are related words and involve the word fence that gives us fencing. So essentially it's the art of using weapons or your body in a combative way, okay, to defend yourself and to fight back against someone. And in other languages, obviously in French it's escrime, in Italian skirnema, I think German it's Fechtkunst or something like that, and you know, so there's different terms for different languages, but essentially fencing in English, in the English language, applies to, I would say, the use of weapons in offence and defence in a martial art, okay? And so it's not just the modern sporting activity, which I think most historical fencing and HEMA, historical European martial arts people, tend to refer to as sport fencing. Because let's be frank about it, modern fencing, the one at the Olympics, is a sport, and it has very different goals and a way of carrying out, of reaching those goals and executing itself than original fencing did, fencing intended as a martial art and for self-defense and for war and so on. So whereas in historical fencing and HEMA our priority is to protect yourself from someone attacking you and to incapacitate, or let's be frank, kill them in return. In the sport of fencing, it's essentially about scoring a touch, making an electrical circuit in the case of sabre and foil, or depressing a pressure button in the case of épée. And it's really become a game of tag. The modern sport of fencing has become a game of tag. You know, one example, I just pick out one thing that really defines a strong difference between historical fencing and modern sport fencing. For example, you know, in épée, and let's remember épée was originally brought into the sport of fencing as a way of trying to get back to a more realistic ideal of what fencing was about, so they introduced the full body target and a slightly heavier thrusting weapon than the foil. But actually, I would argue it's actually gone the other way and has become even less realistic because, you know, in épée, I think you have to make contact with the opponent. I think it's 0.3 of a second. But it's a fraction of a second before they make contact with you. So historical fencers who have done épée, have done épée fencing, not to a very high level, just at club level, but historical fencers who look at épée fencing see it as completely suicidal, because essentially it's two people stabbing each other in almost the same time, and the one who managed to stab first by a fraction of a second is the one that wins the point. And in historical fencing this is a nonsense, because in reality, as we know from many original accounts, many original duel accounts and battlefield accounts, you can run your sword through your opponent and they can quite happily then run their sword through you, or chop you in the head or whatever. And so when two people hit each other in the same fencing tempo, as we call it, or fencing time, which is certainly much more than 0.3 of a second, we regard this as a double kill, a double hit, and we either penalise it or it scores no points. Okay, so there's one fundamental difference between historical fencing, where we're looking at the art of self-defense and the art of offense, and modern fencing, which has really become a timed and electrified game of tag. And I want to finish by saying that's not to belittle what sport fencing is and what it achieves, because it's a fantastic sport. I sport fenced for many years, as did many historical fencers that I know. I fenced at school, I fenced at university, and I fenced for a while after university as well. And it's a great sport, and actually it teaches you a lot of really good fundamentals for historical fencing, for what I call real fencing. Yeah, it's got a lot going for it, but you have to recognise that in historical fencing, or HEMA, what we're aiming towards is a combative martial art, whereas in sport fencing it has become a game of tag, and it is a sport. It's a very good sport, but it's a sport. Thank you.